In this chapter we'll be modelling the skull-shaped crest of our ninja. I'm going to keep the same placement as the crest in the concept art, but I'm going to use an outline that I made of my own design, which is slightly modified to the one in the concept art. Firstly, I'm just going to turn the background image on, and then just go to open up a new image. And in the ref plates folder is a folder called crest, and you can find the outline of the front of our skull crest here, and I've just loaded that in. And looking at the concept of our ninja, I can just scale and move this outline to overlay in the right area of our ninja's chest. So with that done, I've just selected the torso and put the object origin center just there, and I've just created a plane, and I've hit slash on numpad to bring it into local. So here's some reference I have collected off just Google Images, and I'm just putting them up on my external monitor just as a bit of an extra reference for the 3D look of the skull, so that I can mix up the outline that I have here as a blueprint, and also just to get an idea of how thick the skull should come out and the way that the eyes and the nose connect. I'll go back into the properties with N, and I can just play with the transparency of the background image, and I'll increase that so that the image is darker and I can see my vertices better as I now come through and trace the outline of my skull. I've just added a mirror modifier as well, and I'm going to turn on clipping so that I can bring that middle vertice right into the middle, and they'll merge together. And then I can just start extruding that one vertice out all the way around the skull. And because I've got the mirror modifier there, I only have to do half. I'll just duplicate one of the vertices as well, and just move it out to the eye. I'll get one of the ones that aren't in the middle, because the clipping will make it stay in the middle. And especially on the outside part of the eye, I'm keeping track of how many vertices are in the face outline as well, so that I can also always almost imagine the faces that will connect up later on. So this is just planning ahead for the topology that I'm going to be using. Same with the eyebrow here, as I just extruded that down. I'm looking at how many vertices are making the eye outline, and imagining that they're going to spread outward in faces and become these two parallel loops. With that outline done, I'm just going to select these eyebrow and nose outlines and just move them out in my side view on the right here that I've gone into. And then I can start just pushing vertice by vertice to form the shape. As the eyebrows come out towards the side of the head at the top, I'm just making them slowly come back towards our ninja's chest. And also down here near the mouth, this is kind of the jaw area that it's going into, so I'm making the nose outline come out, and then as the outline comes down to an end near the jaw, I'm just pushing them back as well, close to the original outline of the whole face. I've done the eye as well, and I've just basically pushed that out closer to the outlines that are near it. So the inside area of the eye I've pushed a little bit further out to get close to the eyebrow trace, so that when we add in faces, there won't be a huge dip or a large separation between the two loops. Now in side view, I've placed my 3D cursor here, and just by pressing full stop on the keyboard and selecting those vertices, it will cause it to rotate around the 3D cursor, so that allows me to just rotate that whole area of vertices outward and point them a bit more forward. Then I just made some tweaks. Now I'm going to select this whole bottom area of the trace and move it out, and then I can just rotate some of the vertices in the outline to make the jump forward a little less extreme. And especially along the nose up to the eyebrows here, if I see any areas that are a little bit bumpy in the side view, I can just smooth those out, moving across the y-axis. So I begin moving and then just hit the middle mouse button to make sure that it doesn't change position in my front view, only moves forward and back. So now I'm just matching up vertices between the different outlines, subdividing and deleting faces as I need to, and I've just connected the eyebrow there to the side of the face as I get closer to adding faces. And I'm taking a little bit of artistic license on the shape of the outline as well. I'm breaking a bit away from the reference, but not much, just making the head area a little bit fatter or wider. I'd like to make an outline that goes up the middle of the skull as well at the mirror point. So just by selecting these vertices here along the nose and eyebrow outline, I can simply Shift D to duplicate, and then just move them sideways and press the middle mouse button so that I'm only translating across the x-axis, and then I can just move them straight into the middle of the mirror point, and the clipping will cause them to merge together. And there I have an outline in the middle. I'll just connect a face there, an edge, sorry, and subdivide to the top of the head outline, and there we have our crest trace complete to begin filling in. With the reference images in my external monitor that I displayed earlier, I decided to try and just rotate with R and then R the whole eye outline just to give it another direction. And when I'm pretty happy, I can just extrude out all of the vertices of the eye trace. Then I can move and rotate using tapping R twice a lot to do a trackball rotate. Saves you having to go into each different direction and rotate. And then I can just begin attaching faces to the outside and seeing if I can get a pretty nice loop that can circle around the eye and connect to the rest of the outline. So you can see here I've just made an extra loop cut with the Control R, just so that I have an extra vertice there to connect to the eyebrow. And I am cheating a little bit with this mesh, I must say. When you have something like this crest that's not going to be animated at all, you're not going to have a moving face or any deformation at all. Sometimes I will just go a little bit quicker in terms of the topology. It's a good practice to always try and have good topology, but sometimes I might cheat just a little bit here and there and not have the exact same fantastic loops that I might have for a face mesh of a character or so. But I will try as hard as possible to make sure that there's no tries at all. You can see here that I've just extruded out some of the vertices of the trace, and I'm just playing with the mesh. Right now I'm just going to select these two corner vertices at the bottom of the extrusions and merge them together. So that'll make those two loops from the nose and the side of the face come together. And here I can just connect these faces together, make a loop cut, and join them together. So at the moment I'm just going to add faces directly, and then as you can see I can add a loop cut in the middle to match up with the extra vertice that I have at the top. And there we go. I can also add these two vertices on either side, and that actually gives me a nice little dip in the mesh as well there. That will help me have this nice little dip of the between the cheek and the nose. I'm going to smooth the mesh at this point and just again Control N to make sure the normals are corrected. And with these vertices here I'm just going to join those faces together, and this will form sort of the outside of our jaw. I think there'll be a gap that sort of goes back into the chest, maybe even a complete empty space there, so you can see his jaw is just this thin bone that comes around the bottom. Now this area I decide to get rid of the extra vertices in the middle, and there I can just connect one big face between the eyes, just so I don't have to add any more loop cuts in the eye there, and there isn't too much detail needed between the eyes, so that will just be a little bit smoother. Now I made an extra loop cut here between the cheek and the nose, and basically that just allows me to push out the shape here and sort of get this this bump and this dip in the middle of the nose, which just looked a bit similar to my reference. It's maybe not exactly accurate, but it just gives the shape a bit more of an interesting appearance. I'll just make a cut here now at the bottom of the nose just to add a bit more detail to that area. and blend out that dip to the tip. Now I'm not making any thickness at the moment in the mesh. I'm going to imagine that this jaw comes out at the sides and then dips back, and then the jaw simply curves around the whole back here. So rotated around, so I'm at the back of the character. I'm just going to select these vertices here, these 5, and extrude them along the x-axis to the middle of the mirror point. And then in side view I can just move them out and rotate them a little bit lower. So the idea is that the bottom of this jaw, the back of the jaw, will go into our ninja's chest as if it has just been kind of sawn off to just be placed over the top of our ninja's chest. So I've just now connected up the back of the jaw area, added a loop cut, and just added faces. So now it's time to work on the last remaining area of our filling in, which is the top area of our skull here. I'll begin by selecting these 4 vertices at the top of the eyebrow, and I'll extrude them upward and just scale down a little bit. And then I can just select and add a face here to meet the nose. At this point, I'll just extrude this one vertex just upward, and I'll add a face here at this point. Add an edge and subdivide here, which will allow me to just move this forward a little bit and add 2 faces. So now if I make a loop cut down this area of the mesh, I can simply take that bottom vertex and merge it with the other, and then we have 2 faces because of the we only have 6 vertices remaining after merging. So now we just have this chunk here at the top, and we have a couple of loops that need to be curved down, but it looks like we have too many vertices around the eyebrow, so we might have to work out a way to make these all connect properly. So with this middle edge, I'm just going to pull it out as its own little island, and basically my aim is to just connect the faces around. Now this area can be quite smooth, so I don't mind adding this large skewed face just above the eyebrow. Really at this point I'm just looking for a way to connect them all together. And that works fairly well. But you can see that there's still just a couple of sharp faces there, so if I just hit T and select smooth again, that should take care of that problem. And now is a good time to add a subsurf modifier, so I'm just going to go into the add modifier options and add that in. Can also turn on subsurf in edit mode now, so I can get a bit of an indication of where the vertices are being pulled. And I'll just make some final tweaks to the mesh before I attach it to our ninja character. Nothing really set in stone here, I'm just playing around with what looks nice and having a look at my reference as well for anything that could be cool that I can steal design-wise. And when I'm ready in my side view window, I'm just going to hit numpad / to bring back the whole scene with the rest of my objects and ninja. You'll see that currently the skull is inside the ninja's torso mesh, so just in side view there I've moved it forward along the y-axis, and I'm just rotating and placing it in side view to match up with the concept art, and also rotating just to make sure that it's sticking to the chest quite a bit there and it's not sticking out too far out the front. Now I did make my own design with the outline there. It's a bit different to the concept art, but the placement is pretty good and it looks quite nice. You can see here I've selected all the vertices at the back top of the jaw and also the back of the head to form a ring, and I've just extruded them back once into the chest, and then extrude one more time and scale all those vertices down, and that will just completely lock off the whole back of the skull so that there isn't a huge gap. And at this point it's really just the top vertices of that ring that will be seen outside of the chest, so I'm just going to make a few little tweaks and smooth out that area, and the ones that are pulling the rest of the skull inside the chest don't seem to matter too much there. Now, one thing I do like about David's design that he's supplied is these two bones that are sticking out near the cheek there. And I figure I might try and achieve something a bit similar with my current design. By just selecting these two vertices here, I can just push them out, and because the torso mesh sort of cuts the mesh at that point, it's an intersection, but it works quite well to give us this shape that appears to come to a point. I'd say it looks a little bit scarier now, which is a good thing, as I suppose the point of the crest is to be quite intimidating. So from there I'm just going to add now a solidify modifier. And I'll just increase the thickness to a level that I'm happy with. And also the crease sliders there for the inner, outer and rim, just to give a bit of sharpness to the corners. I also just press the up arrow of the solidify modifier just to put it above the subsurf in the stack, and that allows it to work properly. From there in edit mode I can just make some final tweaks now that we have solidify done, and that saved us a lot of work trying to thicken the mesh manually. So I'll just take the front view 3D window out of local view, and I've just placed the 3D cursor here above the skull, and I'm going to add a circle and change the vertices to 7. And if I just rotate it in the front view 90 degrees, holding control to make sure it snaps 10 degrees each time, I can scale down in side view to sort of create this basic shape at the mirror point of the horn. Now in front view I'm just going to extrude outward, and I can also just hold control and left click to do multiple quick extrudes around towards the tip of the horn. With one side of the basic horn complete, I'll add a subsurf modifier and also set the object to smooth, and then add a mirror modifier, and I'll have to change the axis from X and I'll find by clicking through those that the Z axis is the one that we wanted, and that will mirror over the other side of the skull. Now you can see in side view I've moved the vertices as well, just so that they don't intersect with the chest torso area of our ninja. And when I'm happy with the shape, I can then come in and use this wonderful technique to get the ribbed effect of the horn. You can see I've just added a loop cut and scrolled the mouse wheel, or you can also type 4 to add in 4 loop cuts between those two rings. From that point I've just Alt Shift right click selected a couple of the loops, basically selecting one and then skipping one, and then when I scale those down with Alt S, it creates this this ribbed effect that you can see on the horns. Now as I do this each time, it's creating quite a straight line between each of the main rings, and by simply just selecting one of the middle rings there and turning on proportional editing, I can play with the radius with the scroll mouse wheel and just cause that straight area to curve around a bit more, and that will hide the fact that I've just added a whole bunch of straight loop cuts. From there I can just right alt click some any amount of loops that I'd like to increase the size, and just make some of the areas in the horn a little more random so that it isn't too linear all the way around. I'll just fix up this little part in the area in the middle, and at the very tip here I can just make an extrusion and put them all the way to scale 0. By holding control you can scale all the way to 0, and then I can just simply, with all those vertices selected, choose remove doubles. I'll have another look at my concept art just to see if there's any final changes that need to be made, but it's looking pretty good now. It matches the concept well, and Looks a little bit menacing, so we've achieved what we were hoping for. So we're almost ready to move on to the rest of the accessories, but I'd just like to do a few housekeeping tasks right now. For example, we've got these grid lines going right through our ninja's head, so down here in the properties I can just turn off the X and Y lines of the grid. You can also see that the bandages have a darker material here, and that can really help show the difference between the objects as I'm modeling them. So I might just start first by selecting all the objects of my ninja and the torso last, and then just Control L to bring up the links menu and join all those materials together. So now you see that there's 24 objects with material 002. I'm going to go ahead and change that to light shade. Just give that a name. And from there I can just start deleting any excess materials that an object might have. I've just selected the bandages here. And then I'm just going to hit the 24, whatever that number might be. It may be different for you. And that will make it a single user. So from there it'll basically mean I've got a new material that I can change only for that object. And I'm just going to lower the, make the color a bit darker gray and lower the specularity. And from there I can select any objects that I would like to have this darker material. And when I have them selected, I'll just lastly shift right click the bandage object with the darker material and then Control L, link materials. And this isn't going to be for rendering purposes, this is just as I model to get some difference between the objects so I can see them. And so that's the crest done, and we can move onward to the next chapter.